Computer Science, and I am the Academic Director of the IB Life Design Lab, which has invited you for this amazing DYZ talk. This is our first talk, and we're very excited to welcome you all here. And we have Rayyan, who will introduce himself shortly, and we have the amazing Rumaisa, who will be sharing her life story with us. So we have another DYZ program coming up tomorrow, right? So if you have not attended DYZ yet, Designing Your Zindagi, it gives you the framework to actually navigate through your own life. It will help you see what kind of success paths are available. It will help you see what are the possibilities for you in the future. So it's going to be an interesting workshop. So if you've not attended DYZ, the registrations are open and it will be happening tomorrow on City Campus. I think the details have been shared with the participants. If not, we'll share with you the registration link as well. And without further delay, we're going to start with the talk. So over to you, Rayyan.
Assalamu alaikum and good morning to everyone. My name is Rayyan. I'm a sophomore here at IBA, and today I welcome all of you to DYZ Talks. DYZ, if you do not know, stands for Design Your Zindagi. Now, why are we sitting here in the first place? Why does DYZ exist? And that is because all of us think that we are doing everything the right way. But we're studying, we're chasing achievements, we're chasing our goals. Yet, somehow at the end of the day, when we lay on our beds, we sometimes feel disconnected from what we have achieved throughout the entirety of the day. Now, this platform is about questioning ourselves, questioning that defaulted path that we are walking on, questioning as if we're walking on someone else's path, as if you're living someone else's script. So this is the purpose of DYZ. Now our speaker here today was born in Pakistan, then she moved to North America. She went on to build companies, work in the Silicon Valley, collaborate with incubators, and spend years in the global tech and innovation ecosystem. So today here with us we have the founder and CEO of Change Reactor, which is Ms. Rumaisa Mughal. So a big round of applause for her, please. Let's give her a warm welcome to IDEA. Assalamu alaikum.
Well, I'm so glad to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for coming. Now, I gave a very brief introduction about yourself. Why don't you please tell the entire audience your journey, how all of it started in the first place, because पाकिस्तान के अंदर एक काफ़ी common perception होता है, which is work jobs. It is to graduate and find a job. We have career fairs over there, and I see students standing in long queues with CVs in their hand. कि please कोई हमें नौकरी दे दे, please कोई internship दे दे. You went on a little, what I call it, the unconventional path. You went into the entrepreneurship ecosystem. You went on to founding your own company. How does this attitude, this innovation, this idea instigate in the first place? How does it start?
Sure. So, just a quick intro. I'm Rumaisa. I was actually born in Umarkot, and I did grow up in Karachi, and then about 11 years ago, I moved to North America, and right now I'm visiting in Canada. So I started my career in game design, graduated from Indus Valley School of Art and Architecture. But what's interesting and how that pivot happened is I had a really nice job. I was working at 10 Pearls at the time, and satisfaction level was pretty okay. Good job, good environment, everything. But then I started taking these freelance projects. And my mom would be like, you go to work and then you come back and you work again. She's like, what is wrong with you? And I'm like, but these projects bring me joy. And that's just a job. And that made me think, I was like, shouldn't I be doing just more of what brings me joy? And the difference is I was working on games that brought me joy at the time. And just other web apps, etc., because I was a UX designer. And that's just concept of joy. Instead of overworking myself, I was like, I should do this. and I just like transitioned into, okay, let me just start my first company, which was in 2014. And this concept of joy is something जो हमारी society में you'd never hear it, because even when I was growing up, it wasn't even like have a perfect job. It was more like you graduate, you get good grades, you graduate from a good university, and you get married and you have kids. And from that standard, I failed a lot because I just got married like last year. But what was interesting is I always like questioned that concept of joy, and I was like, oh, but joy is not practical. Like, you can't have joy. And I was like, but I can have joy. And I would always like, people would call me that sappy person who reads a lot of self-help books and all of that. But I would always question the concept of joy in my head. And so one thing led to another, and I just, chasing joy, moved to North America, decided to move. My parents were not happy about that. My father's sitting right here. And they were like, "Tum kya kar rahi ho? This is not the life path that we are taught to think that this is your life path." And I was like, it's okay, I'll figure it out. If not, I'll come back. And I'm sure we'll talk more at a later point about the hustle culture, but living in Silicon Valley taught me something, which was like, everything is great. There's so much innovation and tech, and like I am in the heart of where, you'll get the world innovation. But I wasn't happy. And then I just kept chasing joy, and I know it's not just a concept, it's not just a myth that, oh, you shouldn't just chase happiness. But with time, I found out that joy is within. It's an internal game. It's not dependent on external conditions. So I'll speak more about that, but to finish off my journey, I lived 4 years in San Francisco, 4 in Chicago, and then moved to Canada. I worked a lot in, so after I was a game designer, I started my first company, and then I did my MBA in design thinking, and I went into corporate innovation. And I got to see how giant multinationals and North American companies think about design thinking and innovation and growth. And so now what I do is I actually recently left my job because I was like, this is what I'm passionate about, entrepreneurship and designing your life. And I now full-time work with individuals as a business strategist and as a life strategist. So yeah, if you want to ask me more questions about anything, please do. But in a nutshell, that's...
Definitely. Now you mentioned that hustle culture. So my question is following on that all of us have been much involved in what we call the hustle culture. It is what we assume a conventional day in our life, getting up, going to either work, going to our universities, attending classes, doing our tasks, doing our assignments, and we frame this under the umbrella of hustle culture. But my question is this really hustle culture, or is this turning into a rat race under the disguise of a hustle culture?
So what's interesting is, and I realized this because there was a point in life where I thought I was at complete rock bottom, and in San Francisco. So when I moved to the US, I didn't have we don't come from a very stable financially background, or didn't have oh, here's the money, go do an MBA in Silicon Valley. No, it was extra hustle for me, because not only am I an international student, but I also have to figure out how to pay my bills, but also my tuition fees, but also work and also eat. And now I don't even have my mom at home who's gonna eat or do laundry. So it's like a lot, right? And your hustle culture intensifies. And what's interesting is that even in Silicon Valley, there is a big hustle culture, and there is a huge rat race. What's interesting is one day you'd be sitting at a cafe or crossing the road, and the person next to you is sitting and just talking about, yeah, I closed a $5 million deal, and like you're walking and like there's a drone, and this is 15 years ago, there's a drone just, walking by or on the sidewalk, and you're like, this is amazing. But when you take a step back, you realize it's a rat race. And yes, everybody is trying to achieve and become this person. Yes, I locked the funding. Yes, I got this award. But like, are you doing that for yourself? Or are you doing that because that's what society's standard for success is? And then, so what's also interesting, I tell a lot of my friends, is when I moved, because in Karachi, when I was living here, I was working at the Nest IO, as a program manager, developed the entire curriculum, working left and right with entrepreneurs, and then I moved to San Francisco. And what was interesting is there was almost no culture shock in the way we think, because it's a big hustle culture here, and it's a big hustle culture over there as well. I was working with entrepreneurs there and here, so for me, there was no culture shock, at least in the mindset. But when I moved from San Francisco to Chicago, I was like, okay, where am I? Because over there, people enjoy their weekends, not necessarily care about, hey, where life is going, and all of that. But there's a bit too relaxed. So interestingly, in the same country, I got to see two sides of the pendulum. One side is the hustle culture, and one side was like, who cares? Like, I have a job, pays well, I have my weekends, amazing. And I've always been very introspective in terms of like, but I feel like I have a little more to give, and so I should, or like, I feel like there has to be some more point of being on this planet. And so I've throughout been trying to blend the two worlds, the hustle, the not so hustle, the Eastern and the Western. And I would say that hustle culture is overrated. Yes, hard work is extremely important, but I would like to challenge you all to think also about your mind, because your life will be as abundant and as chaotic or as easy or as challenging as you believe it to be. And there's a whole concept which I'm not going to go into much detail about, but the fact that we have, as human beings, we have the ability to attract things in our lives and not just chase them. So if you want a certain job, a certain something, do you think from a place of like, oh, I'm worthy, I'm great, I'm gonna get it, and oh, these are the 3 things I'm gonna do to get it, whether not depending on who, do I know somebody in this organization, maybe they can put in a word for me. No, you just have confidence within yourself, and the rest will fall into place. I don't know what I'm saying is making sense, but I feel like we should not be running behind or after things just for the heck of it, because society or our previous generations set the goal of like, this is what success is, and this is what your life success should look like. But think for yourself. And it's okay if you're confused. It's okay if you give yourself like a little sabbatical time. But joy is important, because as Tony Robbins says, success without fulfillment is the ultimate failure. So just think about that.
This is a cute way of clapping. This is the first time I've seen this. You mentioned attract, not chase. So maybe a real life example of yours where you were initially chasing after something, you were working hard for it, you were hustling for it, but you realized and then you stopped. But eventually paths collided, things led to one another, and you got that in the end. And when you now look back at it, you maybe realize that maybe the chase wasn't so worth it. There could have been better alternatives. So maybe an example, if you have one.
I do have examples. My most biggest example is how I met my husband. But also, I think what I would say is, okay, here's a new concept for everybody. I apologize. But Because I've been this weird person who would always read self-help books and gravitate towards, but what does life mean and why are we here and what is this guy saying and how could this new concept be? I've been doing a lot of research around just mindset and the power of mind and our thoughts. And it connects to attract, not chase, which is essentially that whatever frequency, everything around us is energy, right? Rayyan, myself, thoughts, people, table, chair, water, nature, everything. And everything has a certain frequency, right? You may not be able to see it, but it does. And what we need to do is essentially embody the frequency we want to attract. So let's say if you want to attract a certain job, say, I don't know, I want to become the CEO of Engro, even though you're just graduating, right? Well, your logical mind might think, oh, this is not going to happen. I need to know somebody. I need to have the experience for it. I need to know something about energy or have a proven record and etc., etc. But on the other side also is who is the CEO of Engro, for example? How does he think like? What does he need to? What is his vibe? What is his energy? How does the CEO think like? And how does he dress? How does he behave? What are his smaller actions? And am I embodying that frequency today in order to attract that future? And so I would encourage you all to think about whatever future you want to create for yourself. Think about the frequency. Is it involved in joy and self-fulfillment? Because again, no matter where in life you go, if you're not fulfilled inside, you'll never find happiness. So just think about what frequency can you embody within yourself in order to attract whatever you want in your life. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think that does.
Okay.
Okay, this is a little interesting question which I think our audience might like to hear. If we drop an IBA student, a current undergrad student who recently just has done his bachelor's, we drop him into the hectic world of the Silicon Valley. You having experienced Silicon Valley hands-on, what is one thing which would shock us, first of all, and one thing that would disappoint us?
I'm thinking back to when I was dropped in Silicon Valley because that was my first spot and how I felt. Everything aside, somebody asked me this and just walking on the streets, because we don't have a walkable city. It was such a privilege, and I would just walk and I would cry. I was like, this is amazing, I can walk. But those jokes aside, I think what they would find exciting is because Silicon Valley itself, yes, it's the grounds for innovation, and people think differently, and they don't just think about themselves. It's like, yes, you will see quotes on the streets just be like, we're here to put a dent in the universe and change the next generation. And you see these inspiring things everywhere, which, yes, really, really boost you, which is amazing. But then I have to also say that whether it's Silicon Valley or whether it's over here Karachi, there is a fluff concept of, oh, startups are amazing, let's jump on the bandwagon, and entrepreneurs are amazing, and this is it, and anybody who has a job is just looked down upon. No, that's not true, and that shouldn't be true. Because what really happens is, I'll give you an example. I was at an event, and this is in San Francisco. In Silicon Valley, we're at an event, and I'm sitting next to a guy. He was an engineer, and we obviously start talking, and I'm like, okay, so what do you do? He's like, I'm an engineer, and I just quit my job to start my company full time. And that makes me really happy, listening to somebody quit their job to build their passion, and I was like, this is amazing, tell me more. And he shows me he's like, let me show you a prototype. And he pulls up his phone, and he shows me a keyboard of cat stickers. And I was like, okay, what do you do? And he's like, you communicate with people with just cat stickers. You don't have to type. And I'm like, okay, but then what else? And why? He'd be like, it's fun. And I'm like, you just quit your job for this. So, I'm sorry, I judged him absolutely, but it's like this entrepreneurship has also become such a glorified buzzword that people just want to associate their identity to that without really thinking, oh, can this actually help me help myself, my circle, and the people around me? Versus, just something that society might think it's cool. So I'm sorry I took a tangent there, but going back to your question, what an IBA student might think, yes, they'd be completely, absolutely driven and mesmerized by the innovation around them. Because, as I mentioned, there is tech and innovation all around you. But what's also interesting is I think it is very internal as well, because I've had moments in life when I was just walking and I saw a branch, like a dead leaf branch on the sidewalk, and I picked it up and I was like, man, this is amazing. This is so innovative. Like, I don't know how God created this life, but this is beautiful. Looking at trees that just die in winter because we have very harsh winters in North America, and then they come back to life. So innovation is around us. I don't want you guys to think, oh, innovation's only in Silicon Valley. It is around you if you pause and think and observe. And perhaps what they would be disappointed by is, it is a facade. It is a facade. It is a rat race. It is so much hustle culture that yes, while people are building things and doing amazing things, a lot of them are not internally happy. And for me at least, that's how I define success. You can achieve whatever you want in life, but if you're not happy, if you don't have that internal fulfillment, then what is anything for, right? And it goes back to also, whatever you're building, if you're building it from a place of passion and love and excitement, then you can, like, we all have heard, do what you love what you do, because then you're not working a single day in your life. But if you're in a miserable job where your heart's not there, then yes, you're just killing yourself slowly.
I think in this answer and one before that, you mentioned, and you also have walked the same path of, before starting your own company, before doing a startup, you worked a job. And that individual which you mentioned with the cat stickers, he also did a job before he started his own thing. So is this like a conventional way one should do a startup? Maybe work a job and then do it, or can a graduate like directly start their own thing, do what they like?
I think it's a very individual and personal preference, but what's more important is why you want to start a company. Do you want to start a company because you have a great idea or a business model, or because that's what everybody's doing and you think you might find your worth and identity if you become an entrepreneur? So it's going back to that why and aligning it. I personally do think, yes, whether you're still studying, getting some practical experience is always helpful. Go to internships, work for free if you can, do some freelance projects, switch jobs and industries every semester, because this is the time to explore. Go become a server. Heck, why not? It gives you amazing people skills. And then you have time to, be like, okay, I know what I want to do. Because you don't want to start a business too soon either, because most startups fail because they don't have product market fit. And things get hard. Things can get hard. And they will. And as I said, if you're not attached to what you're doing, if it doesn't feel like a calling, then you're gonna get burnt out. So don't care about what society's expectations are, whatever we grew up with, of what success is. Look for that internal joy. And I know that's so easier said than done for someone sitting in North America, because I don't live here anymore, but because I did grow up here, I went to college here too, I know how it can be like. Just having, making your parents happy, or just them saying hey, don't go for your masters. That was also just a big thing. And respect and harmony is important, but then they want you to be happy as well. So ultimately, if you're not happy, you're not going to go anywhere. anywhere, because you cannot achieve anything if you don't fill your cup first. So your cup comes first, and then you can help and give. But not from a rebellion standpoint. I'm not asking you guys to be rebellious and disrespectful.
We've talked about how society sets some standards, how we're obliged to sometimes even follow those standards. Those standards can be the definition of success. Those standards can be the conventional roads one should take after their education. Like you mentioned that 10, 15, 20 years ago, and I think this is still quite frequent, how women are preferably told to get married once they're done with their bachelor's. So when you were doing your entire educational journey and then you stepped into the corporate land field and then the startup ecosystem, at any point did you feel that you were living maybe someone else's script, or you were maybe consciously, subconsciously following the society norms and standards just for the sake of it?
Absolutely. Actually, that hits home real hard, because especially when I moved, and just like that early 2 years, 3 years point, I didn't belong in North America. I didn't dress like them, think like them, be like, as much as I tried fitting, I didn't. But then what was interesting is every time I'd come back home, I didn't fit here either. And I was like, okay, so what is my identity, right? And shuru mein bahut hota tha ki, oh, I don't fit here, I don't fit there, and like, where do I go and where do I find like-minded people? But then eventually, when you really build a relationship with yourself, and the magic is, if any of you avoid sitting with yourself, because I have a lot of friends who do that, then that's where you're avoiding the work, because the most important relationship you will ever have is with yourself. So if you can develop that, that's amazing. But also, I think as far as identity is concerned, sorry Ryan, can you repeat your question again?
My question was that throughout your entire journey, have you ever felt that you're living someone else's script?
So, at a lot of, as I mentioned before, I have been very introspective all my life, and I'm like, why am I doing this? But like, what's the point of this? And I'm like, it just doesn't seem or feel right that we just come here and graduate and this is like the life circle, like there's got to be more. And I think I questioned that from myself at every single point, and especially when, because I was quite the rebellious person when it came to, for example, getting married. And you mentioned that women in our culture, a lot of times that's what's considered success, right? But I was pretty adamant that I want to get married when I find the right person, not for the heck of it. And that served me well. That did not, that wasn't an easy path. Just saying that wasn't easy. But I'm so glad I waited and listened to my heart. But also, I think just question yourselves. Like, are you in IBA because it's a good university, or do you really want to be here? Are you going to do that job when you graduate because that is, what you think your calling is, and you really want to give back, and you think you can grow from there and all of that? Or do you think, oh, my uncle said this is a good university and this will give you this badge of honor in society? So I'm so sorry if I am like seeing these faces of people going like, shit, this goes against my 10-year plan that I made for my life. But once you find inner peace, everything else works out. Who cares what society thinks?
Well, there definitely are times when our heart and our mind does not align with each other. Our heart says something, our mind says the opposite of it. How should one in our age group, decide or segregate the two?
I apologize in advance, but I'm a very heart over mind person. And I also believe that is the true compass given to us by God. That when your heart, and I think Hazrat Ali ka call bhi hai ki the magic is when both heart and mind align. There's this very famous neuroscientist called Dr. Joe Dispenza who teaches the power of thoughts and mind and creating your reality. He teaches how to build the connection and alignment between your heart and mind. And I had a boss in my corporate innovation job. I really looked up to her. Let me paint a picture for you guys. We're in a board meeting, full of white men, mostly, and we're discussing like $1 million ideas. We want to start this new wing for our company, and we have like 3 options. This is the most lucrative, this will be like the easiest to install, and this third option, really hits the core of like what we do. And the sad truth is that a lot of companies, people do care about more, hey, where's the more revenue at, right? Let's take that decision. And she comes and she looks at all 3 of them and she's like, so this is easy to implement. This is the option A is actually most lucrative, but the third option, I think that we should do that. And I'm like, what's your logic? She's like, I don't know. I just feel like we should. And I looked at her and I'm like, who takes decisions like that? Well, that $2 million decisions in like a huge company. But I was so inspired by how she just like said, I feel like we should do this. And I'm like, that's not how decisions at board meetings at corporate level are done. But I was very intrigued by it. And lo and behold, that became such a success because that really resonated on so many levels with people, with what we do, and like that trumped our, the money just followed. And I've become a fan of listen to your heart. But then the sweet spot is always when you are able to align it with logic as well. I have taken countless decisions in my life where in the short moment it didn't seem logical, but there was growth, or there was some sort of experience or opportunity which I would not have gotten if I had just looked at logic. That's what makes you unique too, because 10 people can still look at the same logic, but 10 people might have different hearts and lives.
Definitely. If you were a freshman here at IBA right now, but you have all the knowledge as a freshman that you currently do, what would be one thing which you might do? What would be your journey at IBA? What would you do different? Because when we're at IBA right now, we're living in the present. We have the knowledge of the present and the past. We don't have knowledge from the future. We do not know how our life will shape out. We do not know a lot of things, what they lead to, the consequences of those, the positives of them. But if you were a freshman right now in IBA with all the experience that you have gathered over your years in the corporate sector, what differently would you do?
So, one thing which a lot of us get caught in, especially students, is, life after IBA, right? Job ho jayegi. And then after this, I'm going to do my master's, for example. And then future may, I plan to do this. And we live for the future, not just 10 years, but like 2 years later, or 2 weeks later, or 2 days later. But I want you all to encourage, like in this moment, like today, if all you have is present, because that is what we all have, how can you maximize what you do today? What is it that really aligns with your values, with where you want to go? Hey, I want to not necessarily have like a specific job, but maybe I want to impact people through financial education, right? Or like this is what, how they need to have their finances and grow and empower themselves. Maybe that's your calling, right? Now, it shouldn't be attached to a job, because your purpose or your passion is something else. And so how are you today doing that? Are you sitting with kids and talking to them about it? Do you talk on social media about that? Do you read books about that? So listen to what that spark or calling is that gravitates you, and it's okay if it changes. It doesn't you don't have to have a purpose and go after that. It could be anything, but I would just say go after that feeling and live for the present moment, because when you live for the present, yes, you're still planning for the future, but you're not waiting and you're not buffering your happiness and fulfillment for at a later point, because life happens, man. You never know.
Definitely. I think we'll open the floor for some questions for the students now as well, because I think we've had about 45 minutes of discussion, and there will definitely be some thoughts, some maybe uncomfortable moments, maybe reality checks as well, self-realizations. So the floor is open to questions for anyone who is wishing to ask.
So now you mentioned that how we should follow our heart over our day. But what happens when we, for example, that woman who opted for the third option? What happens if that option, it doesn't hit it, right?
Yeah.
What happens? How to deal with failure then? How do we cope up when things don't go our way and we our mind was on it, and what happens then?
Right. So I'll repeat the question in case everybody didn't hear. His question was more like, if we follow our hearts, but if there's failure, then there's obviously disappointment, and how do we cope with that? So this is an interesting concept, because when you follow your heart, the bigger concept is you're co-creating with the universe and you're co-creating with God, because you're like, life will always happen, right? And if you start believing that this heart is your compass to life, this is your direct connection to God, and this is how He speaks to you, because that is what's unique about all of us. We all have a heart, otherwise you're not a living person. And whether or not something works out or doesn't, उसमें भी मसलहत होती है, right? And the thing is, you don't blame yourself. You're like, I did what you asked me to, or what you told me to, because this is where you get your signal. And then if something doesn't work out, you take a step back and you're like, okay, it wasn't meant to be. But then at a later point, you're like, you know what? Acha hua ye nahi hua tha. Because I want you all to think about right now instances in your life, good or bad, whether, I had to go somewhere to meet a friend, or you didn't get into that college you wanted to go to, or like that trip didn't work out, or that relationship broke up. Like, so many things that happen in our life, in that moment we're like, this is over, this is the end, so what am I going to do now? But then like a few years later you go like, you know what, I'm so glad that didn't happen. So having that faith, I would say, because every day when you're taking a decision, not because my teacher told me to or my dad told me to, but like God told me to. And I'm not saying take impulsive decisions. That's not how heart speaks. That's why I'm encouraging you all to build a relationship with yourself, because when you build your relationship with yourself, you declutter a lot of heart energy.
Then we stop manipulating ourselves.
Yeah.
We think actually.
And then you're co-creating with the universe, the most powerful entity on, not the planet, but like our entire universe. So that's what I would say.
Any other question?
What was your I made it moment when you went abroad? Like, when did you realize that, okay, I finally made it now?
My I made it moment was very different from what most people would think. And this is interesting because my dad's sitting here. But growing up, it was, I grew up in a very conservative household, right? But even going abroad for my master's, and before that, before I moved, I went for an entrepreneurship boot camp to Draper Universities for 3 months, and it was very hard. It was a struggle convincing and being like, it's okay. I know I'm doing something unconventional, but if I fail, I'll come back. Like, all of that. But my main moment was when my younger sister, who is 9 years younger to me, she went on a backpacking trip to Egypt. And it just made me so happy and so proud, Because I was like, I would not have been allowed to do that. And I was like, I did. And I did that. So, sorry, also, it's not about that specifically, but the fact that whatever you're doing, you're opening doors and opportunities for not just your siblings, but maybe cousins or like people around you to like think differently, to, you know, carve their own path. And it's okay if sometimes you have to bear the brunt of a lot of things. You're not living just your life. All of us in our day-to-day, we are contributing to the collective humanity in one way or another. And when you realize that, your life becomes so much more powerful, because then you realize, oh, this is not just me, this is like, I impact so many people every single day.
Definitely. I think what makes us a society in general as individuals in our own domain is the fact that we as individuals collectively work, which then makes us and creates us into what we call a society or a community. And as you said, that there are times when some of us have to take the harder, the tougher pill, but then when we see that those who are juniors to us, those who are younger to us, are being able to have a much better path to walk on, I think that balances taking that tougher pill. So that is very true. Do we have any other question?
Hi, this is Yahya. I had a question. I just need a POV in regards to that. People often link rat race with working in corporate, and I feel like that isn't the case usually, because whatever makes you happy, whether you want to work in a corporate or whether you want to do work as an entrepreneur, it entirely depends on you. Whatever makes you happy. So, do you still think that working in corporate is like like you're running a rat race?
I think different companies have different cultures, and this is the one. Is it on? So whether I've seen corporates both in North America and here where there's no work-life balance, but I've also seen where they have amazing work-life balance. So I do think it's a very different to company values internally. I've seen and worked at startups my own where I was working 16, 17-hour days, and you know what? I was proud of it. I was like, I worked 17-hour days. I wake up at 3 a.m. to talk to China, or like at 6 a.m. I didn't have a life, and I was happy about that because I was like, I'm killing it. No, I wasn't. I was killing myself. So I think having standards is very important, because it's not just about, oh, I want a work-life balance so I can go hang out with friends after. It's about, like, as I mentioned, what is it that you're doing? Why do you want a work-life balance? What does that mean to you? Maybe you want, because at the end of the day, it's important to realize that you're in a job, sure, to have your bills paid, but then also you want to grow. You want to give, but you also want to get. And that's the nature of any relationship. It's always two-sided. So why is that work-life balance very important to you? So you can have some fun in life? Amazing. Fun is very important, because again, you fill your own cup first. Do you want that so you can study outside of work and like have time to and bandwidth and mental space to read books, whatever? Great, that's good. Just be intentional about what it is. But I would say, more than the organization, you set your own standards and be like, I'm gonna get home at 6, no matter what job I get, even if it's like, I don't know, amazing, whoever, Tesla offers me a job. This is my boundary, and this is it. So you set your own boundaries, not the other way around.
Any other question?
Assalamualaikum. So you talked a great deal about building a relationship with yourself, and I'm someone who's been on a journey for years on trying to understand who I am as a person. And the reason why I'm doing that is because, to build a relationship with myself, I've got to know myself. The thing is, every time I get close to that answer, I realize I'm dynamic. People change. I'm not the same person I was yesterday. How do I build a relationship with someone I don't know?
So what's most most important is, yes, we're all dynamic, we're always changing, and we should be. Why do you want to be the same person you were 5 years ago? That means you didn't grow. So that's a good thing, first of all. But the relationship with self, the most important aspect of it is self-talk. How do you talk to yourself? Is your self-talk in your head more like, oh, I'm so stupid, I should have done it differently? Or like, why? Or like, this is why this happens to me? Or like, saying something stupid about yourself, just believing that. And if you think low of yourself, then how do you expect anybody else or life to think highly of you? Because if you are the central station, if our mind is the central station and that generates thoughts that I'm amazing or I'm stupid, then you are sending invisible frequencies out in the world, which either other people or other opportunities catch. So you may never find the answer to who am I. It's we're always evolving, and it's still fun. I find it fun to always be asking myself that same question. But I think what it comes down is your relationship with yourself and how you talk to yourself. So that should be compassionate and positive, because the way you all talk to yourselves today is it same as, let's say, if you had a child, a son, a daughter, is that how you would talk to them? If they made a mistake, would you be like, it's okay, there is unconditional love, this is how you learn from it? Versus would be like, why did you do that? I'm so stupid. No? So it comes back to that self-talk.
Any question? Assalamualaikum. My name is Asfanyar, and I would firstly like to thank you for coming and spending a valuable time and really teaching us something that we really need. Okay, so my question is that you mentioned that you're working 13 to 16 hours and you're building up a startup. So eventually there comes a point in human beings' life when they're burnt out. So what is your best way of dealing with burnouts, and what should a young individual do? Because they're really building their dream, they're really building something that wants to work out for them, but they get burnt out during that process. So what is your best way to cope with that?
So I recently started doing these WTF days. I take them once a month. It's called Whatever the Feeling. And what happens that day is, a lot of times you have like things to do. Oh, I have to clean the garage. I have to like organize my closet. Or like, what am I doing with my life? What is my 10-year bucket list? Or I have to cook food and do laundry and actually do client work, whatever, right? But on those days, my only rule is it has to be guilt-free and I'm not going to do any work. And those days, whether I feel like, hey, I just want to watch TV all day, or I want to, just lie in bed, or I actually feel like journaling or meditating, or yes, I feel like working, like making my bucket list or like strategizing, not from a place of pressure, but I feel like it. Then those, once a month when I give myself those days, it's like you removing yourself, because life happens. You have obligations. We all have responsibilities. We gotta do things. But once you give that guilt-free time to yourself, I found that has helped me not burn out, because I'm not just building a routine for life, I'm building like, a philosophy for life. And back in San Francisco, when I was in Silicon Valley, I was working 16-hour days. But I burnt out. I crashed, and I was, for weeks, I just couldn't function. So that's why it's also important to give yourself a break every once in a while, because then you come back much stronger. But also what's important, and I really want to I hope you guys get the gist of it, is that I used to believe that the amount of money I make is directly proportional to the amount of time I give. But that is not true. That's where attract, not chase comes from. I work maybe 10 hours a week now, making the same amount of money. And Now, how that happens, it's different. It is a game of confidence. When you change your belief, if you attach your belief to something, that's what your belief is. Your reality is your belief. Because we are the creators of our life. And we forget that you're the director, the writer, the viewer, the actor, all of it. So if you don't like something in your life right now, be like, hey God, let's co-create and let's recreate. And I don't like this feeling. I want more joy in my life. I want more growth in my life. And you write it out differently. So just continue asking yourself, maybe like set out some time to think, be like, this is my me time. And what do I feel like doing? What's making me happy? What's not making me happy? That's all. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum. My question is, what is the quickest way to be part of Silicon Valley as an entrepreneur like us?
I think after COVID, the world has changed quite a bit. I haven't been back since then. Well, I did go once. But everything is remote now. And I think there are a lot of opportunities from incubators to universities and schools where you can just look up and explore. But I would also encourage you to ask, what is it that you want from Silicon Valley? Because do you want growth? Do you want innovation? Are you really maximizing your environment here? Are you really maximizing what's out on the internet? We live in a very different world than we did like 20 years ago even, right? So if you're chase a feeling, chase growth, chase innovation, chase joy, don't chase, oh, I want to be an entrepreneur in Silicon Valley. You know, don't chase titles, is what I would say, because then you may be you may think like you're successful, but you won't feel like it. And I think that's, at least to me, I feel that's what success is.
Okay, with that, we'll end with the Q&A session. I think one thing which really stayed with me is the idea that success is not something we chase, rather it is something which we ourselves align with. And that is when actually we realize and we find that who am I, that answers the question that how do I align and find with myself. It is that when we can initially identify that this isn't a chase, it is me aligning with something which is the ultimate goal or could be the ultimate goal. With that, I thank you on behalf of everyone for joining us today, for giving us such deep insights about your journey, how everything started, how we should segregate and differentiate between a rat race, the hustle culture. You maybe even broke some of the typical stereotypes or norms that we have made in our head about some of the ideologies and some of the things. So thank you so much for that. Thank you to the entire audience for being such a lovely crowd. I think with that, we'll end today's discussion. This has been DYZ Talk.
Thank you so much for having me here. Thank you. It was great. It was wonderful chatting with you, and hopefully I'll be back again. Or if you guys have any questions and want to connect, I keep dropping some live ramblings on my Instagram. Feel free to follow me. But you create your own life. You can design it. Just continue thinking, is this mine or is this passed down from generations, different society, and like, is it serving me or is it not? Because a lot of things we get passed down are amazing and you should keep them. But some things are not. So just question that. That's all. Thank you.